Too often business owners today are focusing on the little things in business. They're ordering supplies, dealing with employees, and dealing with customers, when what we should be focusing on is the most important thing, cash flow. I've grown over 10 businesses from the ground up. In this podcast, you'll learn the ins and outs of building a business and how to build transferable value. And most importantly, you'll learn how to maximize cash. They call me Cash Flow Mike, and this is the clear path to cash. Hey, it's Cash Flow Mike, and welcome to the show. It's the Clear Path to Cash podcast, and I'm joined by Linda Delaney. Linda Delaney of LFD Consulting in Memphis, Tennessee. And I'll tell you what, she specializes in leadership development services. And really, I looked at your website, and you have an impressive set of clients. And really, I got the chance to meet you just a couple of weeks ago when you attended one of my two-day live Clear Path to Cash seminars hosted by the MMBC Continuum at the University of Memphis. Hey, Linda, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and good morning. I'm glad to be with you, Mike. By the way, that was just an awesome class that was sponsored by MMBC. It was quite a learning experience, and I have been using the material to study my own financial statements and just get stronger financially. I really enjoyed the class, and thank you for having me today.
Hey, one of those shameless plugs, man. I'll take those every time. But hey, let's talk about you. And the reason I had you on the show is when we were talking, I really got a good feel about who you were and what you were trying to do, from the strategy and organizational consulting that you do. But you always haven't done that, right? I mean, you didn't just walk out of college and say, I'm going to go start somewhere. You actually put in the work in these large corporations before you went and consulted with them. So what I want to do today is kind of dig into that and figure out what was your background like, because I know there's a lot of my listeners out there that are thinking about leaving corporate employment and going out on their own, and you've done it. You've been successful at it. I want to know exactly what it is, your thought process on how it took you to make that decision. Is that going to be okay?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So in my company, we do training and development, and our training focuses, of course, on leadership and employee development. And I've been in training and development about 30 years now. And starting out, I kind of got into training just by happenstance with MCI Mass Markets way back in the day. I realized it's something I really liked. It gave me an opportunity to learn a lot from reading, but of course from the people that I would actually go into a class to facilitate. Went on to do training and development, traveling around the country with Tom Hopkins. It was sales training, but it was the opportunity to really hone my skills and have a platform nationwide to do so. At the same time, to get some management skills. It was my first management job, and I was managing trainers. And eventually, as years went on, I became an executive director for an organization and realized how significant training is no matter what level you are. Getting training for yourself and training other people. And eventually I thought for a moment, well, let me just try this entrepreneur thing because my job ended. It was a nonprofit organization. And I thought I'd try it on my own, but I had no idea what I was really doing, but I was willing to try it. And then I got a call for a job. Well, I needed the health insurance and needed the consistent income. So I went to take the job, and it was in training and development in government, which is the only sector at that point that I had not really worked in. I worked in corporate, I worked in nonprofit, and now government. So as I went on to work in government, I realized that other trainers around me, they were doing, one-off trainings and so forth, but I started to run programs, and I was getting a lot of good feedback from those programs. And so I enjoyed it while I did it, but you asked the question, what made me decide to go independent? I remember feeling not satisfied, not really appreciated. Mind you, I was paycheck, and I think that's a great deal of being appreciated in a job. Mm-hmm. But there was something inside me that just wanted more. I knew I was bigger than the four walls that I sat in every day. So I thought it's about time for me to do it. And I think there's some clear things I think that people should do before they make that decision to leave.
That's awesome stuff. And I don't mean to cut you off, but that's exactly where I want to dig into today's show. But let me remind some people first to go to cashflowmike.com for any of the show notes and any of the links that we mentioned during this episode. You can go to YouTube and search for Cashflow Mike and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to click that bell button to be notified of any of the future episodes. And then, of course, you can hear this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Google. And I want to get back into what you just said. You said, hey, listen, I needed health insurance. I had that security of, that regular income. But I was bigger than that, right? I was bigger than these four walls. I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't, there was something that was missing, right? It's kind of what I heard you say. What was it? What do you think was missing? Did you find out later or did you know then?
So I just knew I wanted to do something larger. There's, I think, in all of us, something that says it's something beyond this that I should or I want to be doing. You don't always exactly know what it is, but I think when there's a combination of excitement and fear at the same time, that's the time to move. Right. I think that fear should make you say, I don't want to go to a certain place. I don't want to go back to a certain place that I was. But that excitement says, I know it's there, so I have to take this chance. And so you run with that excitement. And I think that excitement has a momentum to it because you're going to have peaks and valleys, and you take that excitement and you run as hard with it as you can. And in the process of that running, you're forming your company or to whatever extent you've gotten it at this point, but you're building your clientele, you're preparing yourself in some way or another. And you let that excitement run you so far to that peak, because when you do hit a valley, maybe you will have prepared so much that it helps you to glide through that valley while you get to the next peak.
Hey, well, let me ask you this. I mean, so you're describing that process. When you were building this consulting company, did you do it as a side hustle first and kind of build up your clientele while you were still working, or did you just call it quits cold turkey and go right into it full time? I mean, was there a mix or was it full time?
It was somewhat of a mix. I had a group that I would work with periodically, but it wasn't enough to sustain me, but at least they were there. So I would go and do some technical assistance training with them, maybe about twice a year in Pine Bluff. And as I said, though it wasn't enough to sustain, when I determined that it was time for me to go, I looked and said, you know what, I have something valuable to offer. I have professionalism, humility. I have those things that I believe that people want. And so I started forming the company and just building up, as I said, the clientele base. And here's the thing. I believe that old saying that when the student is ready to teach your peers, I started going to mentors or people that were in business and just asking questions. Some shared a lot, but I took the best and left the rest. I took what I could use and kept moving and moving. And I found that something was happening to keep me excited about it. Since I remember when I made the decision to leave and people said, well, do you have a job? And I said, no, I just know it's time for me to go. I knew within myself, there's something that's intrinsic, something that you can't explain, that you just know it's that time to do it. I didn't just ride on, it's that time. I did something while I had that feeling. When I stepped out those doors, I just started running. I started running with everything I knew. That is, okay, here's what I have to offer. But here's the other thing I want to go back on, because some of the things to me are significant in this way. I planted seeds along the way where I helped other people. Mm-hmm. But when people realized I was out there, they found ways to help me. Some people call me in for a training gig here and there. And when you're in this game, you got to use your time wisely. You have to use your money wisely. And so, because you don't know when the next piece is coming. And so I just take it and steadily kind of invest back into my business, invest into something, some kind of materials or something, or a website that would just help me look the way I knew I needed to look, or for where I was headed to. And eventually, before I realized that I had a clientele base, and then I started to realize, okay, you know what? I can't do all this by myself. It's one thing to do business. I'm going in doing all the training. It's another thing to run business. There's taxes, there's financial statements, you need all those sorts of things. So I realized I needed help. So I would go out and get other people who love training, and I could send them in to do some of the training while I was learning with an accountant to just kind of run my own business, to look at things and what was happening and set goals for it and build a strategic plan around it. And I was fortunate to have those people who were willing to help me with that.
Right. You know, it's funny when I first left, right? Because I worked for the state of Missouri and left that security, right? I had the 401ks, the insurance, the great salary, and left to start out on my own. And I just remember how nervous it was. And I remember, and maybe you were like me, but the first month, I found it hard because I'm like, nobody's telling me what to do, right? I mean, I just got to go do it. You got to just fill your time up and go do it. So how did you overcome that? I mean, you walk out the door, you're like, I've got to make this happen, you know, but there's nobody there. There's no schedule. There's no meeting set. There's no, you know, there's nothing. How'd you do it?
So as you said, it definitely takes discipline, and it's a little lonely, and not having someone to tell me what to do. I just kind of started making the difference up in learning what I needed to do. You know, I remember talking to someone about scheduling things, and I said, you know, I've gone to this electronic, putting everything on there, but I feel like I'm missing stuff. He said, you know, perhaps you should continue with your Franklin planner, writing things down and putting them in there so that you're not tying up all your memory units trying to remember. And what I started to find is I started finding enough to do, and what I could look at is that I was doing too much personal stuff and not enough business stuff. So I had to cut down on that, but it's because I see it by writing it down and keeping my calendar. For me, that drive just said, start to make enough appointments, start taking people to lunch, start just reaching out to say hello to people without asking them for anything. You know, and those sorts of things started to make up my time and help me be disciplined and focusing on those things. And before I realized that I had enough to do, that I didn't kind of need anybody to tell me what to do anymore, because the work was there.
Right.
And not always immediate revenue producing work, but seeds that were being planted that could work, that could bring work in the future. There's one other thing that I thought of, and going back to that leaving piece of the job. I had a few people call me afterwards and say, hey, how'd you do it? How'd you make the leap? What happened? I happen to know these people, and something I understood. One of the things I said to them is, one of the things I say to you is that if you are leaving because you have animosity towards someone, get rid of that first. Don't make the leap just being mad at people, because you want the energy to just be focused on you in this new phase that you're stepping into. So whatever it is, whether you pray or whatever, get rid of whatever you feel for others. If it's just the way you need to treat them, get rid of that and focus all your energy on you, what you need to do and how you need to do it, and who you need to know, and what you need to know will show up on time.
Yeah. All right. So I got a couple more questions for you, but let me remind people to go to cashflowmike.com for any of the show notes, any of the links that we mentioned during the episode. And of course, find me on YouTube. Cashflow Mike is the channel. And make sure you subscribe and leave me some messages. All right. Leave me some reviews. I always like to see that or hear that. Also, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. And I'm back with Linda Delaney, right? Linda's trying to explain to me what it's like to leave corporate safer employment and go out on your own. Now, we talked about, you know, nobody telling you what to do, trying to fill your calendar. Obviously, you made it successful. Were there any pit moments, right? Those moments that you're like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work, where you're just kind of, you know, you feel like it's bigger than you are and you don't know if you can do it.
Absolutely. I think there are many times that we fear how big it can be, and we find ourselves wanting to back up because of that, wanting to just kind of stay in bed or bury our head in the pillow, because there are those moments, and it could be because you don't feel equipped to go above and beyond delivery of your product or service for a client. It could be you have these contracts this year, and when the new year starts, you don't have anything set in place. And you're just wondering, yeah, those are scary moments at times. But I think just when you get that taste of success, it's in many cases enough to carry you through those phases when you just don't know what's going to be there next to bring the revenue that you need. You just start to do more of what you used to do. You always go back to the basics in those moments, because they're going to happen. And as I said, what I've oftentimes experienced is a loneliness, kind of wanting that business spouse, in a manner of speaking, that could always be right there with you. It's like life, someone's not always going to be there. So you just keep it going and pull in the mentors that you need at a given time to help you go along the way. So again, in those little moments when, it's a little scary, I just do more of what I need to do. And in doing more of what I need to do, sometimes I need to rejuvenate me through sometimes listening to some of my favorite authors, or like a Jim Rohn, reminding me who I am and the personal responsibility that I can take to work on me.
Okay. So was there a moment, right? Because I know it's happened with me, where I can feel the difference between me pushing the business out to the market, like going, please listen to me, please buy my stuff, please do this, to the market actually responding and pulling it from you, where, you're like, oh my God, I think this is going to work, right? There's that moment where you can feel it kind of take off. Do you remember that point in time? Can you describe it?
Yes. So that moment when you've done business with people and where you've done what you could, you probably went above and beyond. When people start to share with other people who you are and what you do, and people start to call you and you realize you're in a phase where you're not having to push that business so hard any longer, because you're running off referrals because of the quality and perhaps the quantity of work that you've done. And I would say, to anybody, it's like when I wrote my first book, I remember someone saying to me, you can't sell all of them, use them to put seeds, to invest. So sometimes you have to give some on the give it, and you find, I think that the returns will multiply and coming back to you. But the push for, even with the gap of sometimes feeling, okay, I don't know where my next contract is going to come from in this moment. And then all of a sudden someone calls out of the blue because you've done work with them before, or someone referred you to them. That makes all the difference when I know, what this thing is going. Now, how do I make sure that I have a hold of it, that I, really make the most of it? Because it's scary sometimes to think of it growing and getting beyond you. And are you going to eventually have to expand to a point of getting employees, or getting getting a location where you physically have to be, other than I work out of my home right now and I work with a lot of people, but the nature of the work I do allows me to do that. But it's also at a point where my dates are getting booked heavily. So I want to make sure that I don't get sick, and I can meet those dates. So I try to make sure that I keep people around me that can step in place to do what needs to be done for me.
Well, that's really interesting, right? You said kind of a key to growth, a key to success. You're a one-man show running out of your home, but you don't operate that, and you're not operating at a size of that, because you've built a network of I guess sources that you can refer business out to and still make part of the money, right? I mean, you built kind of a network of consultants.
Absolutely. So I have about 15 consultants on call, so to speak. And I'm steadily being introduced to people. I'm having people steadily refer, hey, here's someone who can do training, and I would like for you to consider her as one of the trainers. So I set up a program where periodically I will set a date and a time, a location. People can come in and let me see them train for about 20 minutes so that I know what I'm getting into as well, and make sure that I'm very clear with them that this is not something where I'm going to call you like in the next 5 days or immediately, but I'd like to know if you would be interested in, if this opportunity comes for your particular area of expertise, that I can give you a call. So I do a lot of training development programs, competency-based programs for employees. And so these are typically about 10-week-long programs, 1 day of training each week, 2 trainings each day. So I can have a different trainer in there for the first half of the day and the second half of the day every week moving forward. So and that also allows some people who have kind of retired or who may be interested in stepping out on their own to come in and do training with me. And as long as they push the brand, in a manner of speaking, as long as they keep the face of the brand that I want, the quality of the training, we're good. And I never have a problem with, helping other people, when I can, to tell them how they can branch out on their own. And hopefully we can work together as opposed to being competitive in a negative way.
So, all right. So you figured out how to be in more than two places at once.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, here's the last question, right? Here's the last question. I'll let you go because I know you got a busy day ahead. That's why we did this so early today. I always ask everyone this at the end of the show. Let's imagine your best friend comes to you, right? Knowing what you've went through, what your personal experience has been, building your own business. What advice would you give that person who wants to start their own business?
So I would say first, determine how hungry you are. Can you look back in your life and determine there's somewhere you never want to be again? And can you look ahead and see that there is something great? There's somewhere you want to be. And if that's the case, if you have that dichotomy set up, then look behind and let the energy of where you don't want to be run you so fast to where you want to be. And a good start for knowing it's time for you to start that business.
Wow, that is powerful. I've never heard it that way. It says, think of some place you don't want to go again. And then run as fast and far away from that as you can. That's fantastic. Hey, Linda Delaney of LFD Consulting in Memphis, Tennessee. And she's worked with some big name clients. I mean, if you go to their website, lfdconsulting.com, it's just a powerful testimony for what she's done, coming from regular corporate employment to doing it on her own to now scaling on her own. Very powerful. Reach out and touch her, and make sure that if you need some advice, just reach out. I'm sure she'd be willing to talk with you. Anyway, this is Cashflow Mike, and I want to thank you, Linda, for showing me what it's like to go out on your own.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for the class, the financial management class that you taught. It was quite inspiring, and I'm using the information.
That's good. Well, I might need that testimonial, Linda. You never know. Okay. Hey, remember to go to cashflowmike.com for any of the show notes and questions that you have regarding today's episode. And we're on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. Just go ahead and follow and leave a review. My name is Cashflow Mike, and you've been listening to The Clear Path to Cash. Thank you so much. And remember, don't be a dumb business owner.